my own world of make-believe.
So the Halo series made it a outstanding 2 seasons before being inevitably canceled. And I can't help but call out the arrogance of it all. What's going on, guys? This is Big Iron Riot here. Welcome to the Riot Stream, where I talk about things that interest me when I'm not talking about scary horror games. Today, something caught my eye, and this is completely coming off the top of my head, and this is more of an opinion piece, but it's something I've noticed, and maybe you might agree with me. Just let me know in the comments what you think about it all. The Hollywood industry and the video game industry are two sides of the same coin. However, they want to treat each other like stepbrothers that don't get along. And we see that in the form of the mediums whenever they cross over. Games that become movies and movies that become games. Halo had a knack for just getting any sort of fan glommed right onto it, and that sucker just sold, no matter what it was, from Halo Combat Evolved to even a line of books that came out, comics, what have you. The Halo fans rejoiced every time they saw it, and they were in it. It was good stuff. So what happened with the TV show? What caused it to make the backfire that it did? I mean, let's be real, there's a lot of reasons, but I got one primary point. I'm getting to it. Well, firstly, I can tell you that their goal, no matter what, when making any show and putting it on any streaming services, the goal is to get as much of an audience as humanly possible. However, this works well when it comes to original ideas, new plans, continuations of shows, that sort of thing. But when it comes to the video game adaptation, there seems to be a huge disconnect. And by huge disconnect, I mean the writers in Hollywood truly believe they can take what they're given and do something better. No matter what, in any video game adaptation, there's always been a massive amount of creative liberties when it comes to showing up on the screen itself. Now, video games have their established lore and they have their fan bases. And a lot of the times, because they've become so popular, it's because of those lores and background stories and things like that they've been given so much prominence and they've sold so well. So why does Hollywood not employ that same technique when adapting it to any medium, really, whether it's streaming service or the big screen itself? We'll use the Halo writers as an example, because when asked if they reviewed any of the information or gaming lore or anything to that effect, they were asked if they played the game, that sort of thing. And there always seems to be a deviation from what the showrunners or writers intend to do. For instance, the showrunner Stephen Kane is quoted by saying, "We didn't look at the game. We didn't talk about the game. We talked about the characters and the world, so I never felt limited by it being a game." Yet the star Pablo Schreiber mentions the richness and the depth of the universe was immediately kind of mind-boggling and incredibly exciting, because what it means as a storyteller is that there's already been a huge amount of preparation and groundwork. That being said, you have two different standpoints on the same show. You have one, the showrunner Stephen King, explaining that there's simply no need to look at the source material and information and only look at the characters and build a story from there. The main character and hero of the story says differently. There is a great and vast amount of lore already pre-built into this idea, and all of it seems ignored. Why? Because writers in Hollywood especially have their own variations of how they'd like to see this played out. Now, I'm not unreasonable. When you get a writer showing up for a new comic, for instance, that new writer proposes a new idea and a new direction to go with said superhero, and it has the risk factor involved. You can, take it or leave it. Once they say their piece or do their thing, it could be successful or it could fail. And then you have the instance where your reputation is put on the line in the process, and for those that did come through and decide to make a new story for Spider-Man, they have now found an instance where they ruined it and they can no longer work with Marvel, or they can no longer do another Spider-Man story. This is not the case and not nearly as risky as what they're doing now and what I've seen with a lot of video game adaptations. As this time there seems to be a standard formula of get game franchise, read the gist of the plot or read the gist of the characters in this case, and then make your own plot as you see fit. Now, as a director or as a showrunner, when you're looking at this information, you have to decide whether or not you want to come onto this project, that you want to undergo this mission. When you do, you have to understand that you are tying yourself to a universe. You're tying yourself not only to a universe, but a fan favorite universe. Halo is nothing to sneeze at, and ever since I was 12, I had been playing Halo. I may not be tournament ready or anything now, but we had been in it for some time. So we've been there for a minute. We've seen everything. We've read the books as a kid, or maybe not. I have, but you have the established lore. So when you have someone show up and say, "Hey, it's time to get this rolling. We're going to make it live action," your mission is to create everything that the fans initially knew, and then some. You're supposed to add more to it, because you definitely don't want to carbon copy anything. But if, say, for instance, when the Silent Hill movie comes out, you watch it and realize that everyone has been shifted around, roles have been made, new characters have been created, you get some sort of alternate universe version of the thing you love the most, which is not what you signed up for, especially if your marketing is directing you towards this thing that you loved. Hey, a new Sonic movie is coming out. Cool. Sonic's actually a cat now, by the way. We thought this was the best direction to go with a live screen adaptation of Sonic. His partner is an armadillo. This is not what you remember, and if you dare try to imply that because you're such an old fan, it's not going to cater to you, none of that makes sense and everything falls through, and I'll tell you why. This idea to bring back a series is based on the old fans it had. If you are saying, hey, we need to try to bring and cater into the new generation of, TV show fans, video game fans, whatever the case may be, by taking this old idea and then redoing it from the ground up, say so from the beginning. When you say things like, we are staying faithful to the series, this is the character you remember, this is the whatever the case may be, that's when we have a problem, and that's when a lot of fans feel betrayed watching it. And while there may be a bunch of fans infighting over whether or not something was faithful or not, the point is every fan got together and unified in the idea that they loved blank. Say, for instance, Halo or Silent Hill or Super Mario Brothers. So when they watch it, they want to be unified just the same. And you further divided them and allowed a new avenue of naysayers and detractors to come and just absolutely shit talk your new project. It's the arrogance of it. The arrogance and the idea that no matter what, while you will get the new license for a Luigi's Mansion game, you're going to go with your first inclination and go, I have a better idea. Hollywood has never been exactly kind to writers for video games. Why? Because they believe they are different, and I can tell they believe they are different based on how they approach a new project. They spend a good portion of the time in the beginning of marketing explaining that, hey, we have this game you love coming out. Then they spend another bit of it after everyone gets initial images or videos or trailers, and they say, hey, well, this isn't just for you guys and the fans, this is for the new people too. They do it every single time in every iteration of whatever they're working on, whether it's Assassin's Creed, the movie, or whether it's the new Super Mario Brothers movie remake. I guess it's a remake? No, we're just going to call it the, Super Mario Brothers movie. Everyone liked Jack Black in it. This is the equivalent of deciding you're going to make a Fight Club movie without have ever seen the movie or book. Yes, I know you don't want it to hinder your creative process. However, your creative process is going to deviate, and it's going to turn into a story on its own. And while I applaud anyone making a new version of a story, that's not how it's marketed, and you know it isn't. When you watch those commercials, you're expecting to see the thing you remembered, and that's why it's being remade. Even more so, numbers of different movies will add little Easter eggs and things like that to call back to the original thing that they're making a movie based off of. So to imply that this is a new thing and you need to just open your mind, and when you walk into the theaters, don't feel like you wasted your money because this is a new version of the thing you remember, that's absurd, and it's also dishonest. To be fairly honest, the director of a video game adaptation that failed the hardest was the most honest about what they did. Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, the directors of the original Super Mario Brothers movie starring Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, when the newest Super Mario Brothers movie came out, they asked what their intent was for the very first movie during a showing of their original movie at a theater, which had a great turnout, by the way, but I would go to be fairly honest. They simply said, we were never trying to recreate the original game. Otherwise, we would have made it an animated film. That's honest. However, it's 30 years. Too late to mention that. They can't come back now and say, we were never trying to create the original game. Their entire marketing depended on that. Their selling point depended on that. It's like if you made a Star Wars movie and you said it's like every Star Wars you remember, it adds more to your Star Wars movie, and then you don't deliver on anything Star Wars, and then after the fact say, well, it wasn't supposed to be like the original Star Wars. If so, it would have just, made the original Star Wars. And I think that's the biggest thing people are missing when it comes to all this information on how a video game adaptation's made. A lot of people will design it and then after the fact defend it by saying this was my creative choices, my creative liberties, when they should just be saying, I thought this was a better story than what I was presented with. If there is a Mega Man storyline, which we all know, or some don't, whatever, but there's a Mega Man storyline and lore built. If you make a Mega Man movie and you change the lore entirely, that's you simply believing you have a better idea of what the people will want to see. However, it's still built on the back of a legacy that we already loved. I don't understand this, and it's only ended in failure every single time. And no one's learned their lesson. Why? Because maybe just the amount of money and budget put into a video game adaptation is a drop in the hat. Well, not anymore. Not with CG. Not with the amounts of marketing you have to just kind of pile up together. These movies take a toll and they take a cost, and all it does is prove to the not developers, sorry, they're not making the games. All it does is prove to the movie makers and writers and things like that they should not be doing video game adaptations because they're just not worth the money. Well, you're the one that changed the story. You're the one that altered everything. So you can't rightly say this is a video game adaptation if everything you've done has changed it. I can safely say no writer or director has adopted a movie for its entirety. They haven't taken the movie and created visuals to go with the lore that was necessary and already created. They just didn't do it. You have variants at best. Some people closer than others. For every Super Mario Brothers CG movie where you have all your characters and just a bunch of, colorful voices to go with it, you have things like Assassin's Creed, where this was a new director. He wanted to, this was his first foray, Justin Kurzel's first foray into the world of Hollywood. Before that, he was doing indie films. And so to make a name for himself, he was doing Assassin's Creed. He got the likes of Michael Fassbender. Life was supposed to be good. However, he wrote his own version of Assassin's Creed. Like, if they're looking for an easier time, there's nothing easier than having years and years of lore just handed to you, and then someone tells you, hey, turns out millions of people love this lore, okay? I need you to make a movie out of it. You don't then look at that stuff and then go, okay, so I have a new idea is what I'm going to try. Especially if you're a new director into the mainstream world. The last thing you want to do is perform a risk so daring with the arrogance on the side, believing that what you're going to make will be enough. And as I look through interviews with Kurzel, he explains later that it was one of the most difficult films he had ever made. All that hard work for what? Nothing. The movie flopped, didn't do well, life moves on. Fassbender still has work. I don't know what Kurzel's up to, but he could have had his moment to shine. Not only that, it was a layup. I don't understand the logic behind making a video game adaptation and you deciding you know better than what years and years of fan base is telling you. Christoph Gans, when he did the Silent Hill movie, the very first one, he is a director that is infamously known for liking the cast to be 90% female. That's great. I'm glad you have a calling card to what you do. However, maybe not implement it in something that has a legacy. No? You're going to make everyone female? Okay. The movie did so-so, and the sequel did even worse. All because you wanted to take your creative liberties. And it wasn't just, female cast. He changed things that were monumental. He had the storyline grounded in something that was more reality-based. One of the creators even based Silent Hill on a town that actually existed when there was no need for it. Like, these are the details that they changed that they want to kind of have their own name stamped to. If the idea of carbon copying a game to a movie just means it's soulless and without your name on it, like you couldn't take credit for it, and you don't want to do that, then don't do that. There are directors that would like to do that. Or there are directors that don't mind doing that. But right now we have a situation where we have directors coming in, adding their own nice and fancy polish to it, and then stamping their name of approval at the bottom and believing they created the new thing. That rarely happens, especially if you're adapting from a movie or adapting from a game, a book, whatever the case may be. If there's a different medium that built a fan base, you cannot come in and then say, I have a better version. It's insulting right from the get-go, and a lot of people that purchase these tickets will come in to expect to see the thing they know and love, and they get your version. Instead, I propose this, and this should be for any adaptation from book, game, side of a cereal box, doesn't matter. If you happen to be making a Captain Crunch movie, doesn't matter, but it should be this. There are various mediums that contain your intellectual property. Say, for instance, let's use the game F-Zero, okay? You want to make a movie out of the game F-Zero. Contains a pilot named Captain Falcon as he's racing in a space race with these supersonic cars. Okay, we have the baseline. You don't stop there. What you do is you take the information given, you look up comic books, you look up cartoon shows, Saturday morning cartoon shows. Every game, you take all this information and you bridge the gap is what you do. If you want to adapt and you want to do something they've never seen before in a universe that is already pre-created, what you want to do is you want to build in between the lines. You want to explain that the events in the comic book happened between this point and the movie's happening now. And then the games happen, or vice versa. But you want to bridge the gap, and that's what all video game or book adaptation should be. The information you did not get to see. So that when we play a new game, we're like, I love this game, and then we hear about a movie coming out, it furthers the lore that we never got. Games can only go so far, much like movies can only go so far. But if they work in tandem with each other, you can essentially have an instance where a character goes through an event in a book, and in between that book and the game that came out, you now have a storyline of what happened in between. This is the lowest hanging fruit. I mean, you can try different variations, but you don't have to say, okay, so we're going to top down redo everything and see what happens. This is how I envision it. This is my vision. This is my thing now. Now my name is attached to it. I do love the idea of people setting out and making a risk with movies or storylines and things like that, but the most needless risk is changing established lore or discarding it entirely. It's killing me. I can't understand why that seems to be the go-to, but in the end, every single fan that follows behind this universe is seemingly paying for it. And for that, I say Hollywood simply just does not care. They believe they know more. They believe they are better. And they have proven themselves wrong so many times compared to the success rates that at this point, the curse of the bad video game adaptation will stay strong for another 100 years. It's only when the writers and directors start to realize they can be working together with the creators, you can get something like Fallout, where Todd Howard, the creator, literally worked with the movie and made sure that everything was lore accurate. And what did we get? We got a good show. We got a good show with everything we needed to see, plus a little more from a place we didn't know. It bridged a gap. Or you can just say, hey, I created this, and this is my new version of Luigi by the way he lifts weights and drinks protein shakes. It's up to you, really. Anyway, that's my complaint. Shout out to everybody on Patreon. I appreciate you guys. The number seems to be climbing along with subscription rates as well as the likes and comments. I appreciate you guys wholeheartedly, and you know me. You put something in the comment, I'll be the first one to line up and talk to you about whatever it is. I enjoy the constructive criticism and things like that. It only makes my videos better. But as for this little topic, I'm going to go ahead and close this, and when the next video game adaptation comes out, maybe we'll have it better. Maybe by the time Return to Silent Hill comes out, we'll see something good. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, later.